Hi everyone! This is the second episode of my illustrated story, Whiterocks Chronicles, The Crimson Claw. If you haven't seen the first episode, go check it following the link in the description below before watching this one. Now, let's jump right into it. 2. Twins. Aelia loved training in the basement at home. Even though the apprentices' grounds at the academy were immense, and she enjoyed sparring with her two roommates during their off time, nothing felt like practicing in this room her parents had converted just for her. Just after waking up early morning, she had run to the kitchen where Nanny Ob, also awake and drinking the blackest of coffees, had made her a hot bowl of porridge. She knew eating as fast as she could wasn't good for her, but she'd done it anyway, eager to rush down to her room in the basement. She was now sweating profusely after 40 minutes of preparatory exercises, and so opened the small window near the ceiling in order to allow the early morning air to cool her down. It would be a bright day, foretelling of spring, the awakening of her country after a long cold winter, and the ceremony of the pillars she would finally be invited to. Though it was in her nature to train a lot, part of her daily routine as a Guardian apprentice, she'd recently gotten to practice even more. During the ceremony of the pillars, the young adults who had turned 19 since the previous spring would be asked to demonstrate their gifts, a process known as the showing. Once done, they would be granted their desired role in society or be guided toward one they could enjoy. It was a coming-of-age ritual, one of the most sacred events in the Whitens' lives, and she hoped to honor both her family and her future fellow's guardian by being at her best. The young woman opened a heavy ornate chest filled with dozens of weapons of all sorts and picked one of her favorite heavy swords. She had planned on practicing some complex movements with it, something she was known to be good at and would surely take advantage of during her showing. Whiterocks being a generally peaceful country, she sincerely hoped she would never have to use her blades for killing or even maiming. She would rely instead on her natural strength and looks to dissuade against aggression. Her heavy swords were, in her eyes, gorgeous means of dissuasion, a technique which she honed amorously. Lifting the sword to her face, Aelia admired the delicate inscriptions that her father, being her favorite blacksmith, had engraved. She started to move with it, almost dancing, entranced, incredibly focused, simply happy. Finally, she noticed from the corner of her eye her little brother Lorneman, who was standing in the doorway. With his big, dark, indigo eyes, his alert gestures, his silent nature and his small features, he looked like a very serious mouse. A serious mouse that she loved immensely and swore to protect forever. The young woman smiled to herself, continuing to dance with her sword. She executed a single-handed complex parade, finishing the move with sword lifted high over her head and, arms still up, saw the iron shine in a pink ray of morning sunlight. Such a pretty sword. Lowering her arm, she went for another series of block moves, but then noticed that the weapon was still shining despite not being in the light anymore. Whacking it from side to side, as if the air would stop the metal from shimmering unnaturally, Aelia tried and failed to understand the phenomenon. She observed, mouth agape, as her favorite sword changed into something unnatural, grotesque, and felt hot anger replacing her growing confusion. Vincennoc. Whatever his reasons, it certainly was his doing. From sharp, heavy and silvery, the blade's form started to wobble, transforming before her eyes, the side vibrating more and more rapidly. A pinkish glow enveloped it, and it looked less and less like the heavy sword the young woman usually favored. The sight was so ridiculous that she could hear her little brother Lorneman failing to mask his giggles behind his hands. The joke was going too far for her tastes, and she was getting furious. Between her grinding teeth, she muttered a single word. Enough! Aelia stormed out of the basement and into the garden, still holding her increasingly weird-looking sword, her little brother following closely. They headed toward the far end of the family orchard, where Vincennoc usually liked to dwell when practicing his most difficult summonings. And there he was, sitting calmly, a book resting on his thighs, his back to an old tree. Directly in front of him was an even bigger, crooked and more ancient tree, which was believed to be the origin of the family's surname. Being no doubt too engrossed in his current spell work, he didn't notice Aelia, her face distorted by anger, balancing the pink and wobbling blade in her left hand. "What have you done to my favorite longsword, you immature, incompetent would-be summoner?" she asked, not containing her temper. The young man, seemingly startled at first, dropped the book he was studying. However, against Elia's expectations, he followed by bursting into laughter. "Oh, come on," he said, wiping his eyes. "Don't be so self-righteous all the time. Such a long face, and bright red on top of that. You're going to end up being a very boring guardian if you don't have a little more fun, you know." Elia gobsmacked, and getting even redder in the face, failed to answer the provocation. Vincenot continued, his tone slightly more serious. "I just created this small summoning of the elements of the sword to make it more powerful and versatile. You know, to help you actually." "Oh yes, very plausible. And you didn't plan for it either to startle me, ruin my training, and contribute to make a fool of me while you were at it?" the young woman retorted, more annoyed than angry now. Vincenot stood up, brushed his tunic, crossed his arms, and responded to his sister's attack with more confidence. "Creating and testing a new powerful incantation doesn't mean it can't be fun, I'd say. And as it's quite short term, you'll retrieve your sword the way you like it pretty quickly. Plus, it's going to work as an additional feature for both of us to brag about during the ceremony of the pillars when everyone sees it." He did actually seem very proud of himself and his unlikely plan, and it could prove to be a nice addition to their display during the showing. If only Vincenot could stop being so infuriatingly immature all the time, even when he had actually good ideas. "You make a pretty good point, I concede you that. But when were you going to notify me about it exactly?" said Elia, each word sharp and precise. Her twin brother had opened his mouth to answer, when Lonerman, who had remained quiet while they were bickering, suddenly slipped in between them, shouting them to stop. To be continued. Thank you very much for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and to hit the bell so that you'll get notifications when I release the next episode. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!